society where systematically these people are neglected and abused, and you care nothing about it, then you're part of this problem. Now, this is why, on the one hand, this is an active thing. To push an orphan is literally you doing an act of aggression. But if you compare it to the next ayah, وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ, and he doesn't encourage the food, and I'll give you a bad English translation on purpose. He doesn't encourage the food of the needy. He doesn't even encourage the food of the needy. I didn't say feeding the needy. I said what? Food of the needy. So let's figure that out first. Why did I say that? When I say my food, your food, his food, the child's food, this person's food, then who owns the food? They do. If I say my food, who owns the food? I do. If you're coming and grabbing my sandwich bag, I say, hey, that's my food. Because I own it. I'm entitled to it. When you say feeding the poor, then you're giving them food that they don't own. That would be in the Arabic language, it'amul miskin. It'amul miskin is you're feeding them, which means it wasn't theirs and you took a sandwich out of your bag and you handed it to them. But when Allah says وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ, not إِطْعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ, He's saying the food belongs to them. You're not giving them something that belonged to you and now you gave it to them as a gift. It was always theirs. And this is a very powerful commentary in the Quran in a number of ways. Firstly, every time you and I give sadaqah, especially food, we're not feeding. We're giving them what they already have, what they already deserve. وَفِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. In their monies, they already have a right for the one who asks. The one who asked, the one who was starving, when they asked, actually they weren't asking for something that you will do them as a favor. It's almost as though Quran is saying they're asking for what they're entitled to anyway. It's theirs, it's not yours. That's how Allah is describing it. But more specifically in the context of this surah, Allah is saying to people like Abu Lahab, when you're withholding the food from them, and you're not even encouraging that food should be given, you're withholding, you're robbing them of what is actually theirs, public funds. These are public funds that you're withholding. So now the Quran is making a very sharp criticism of political corruption whose victim is not two groups of people, yatim and miskin. Yatim, I talked to you about the orphan. We talked about it quite exhaustively. The word miskin is a combination of two things, masaka and sakana. Masaka means to stop and to be at a halt, and sakana is to remain somewhere. A miskin in Arabic is someone who is in a difficult economic situation or a difficult political situation, like a prisoner of war or something like that, who cannot help his or her situation. So for example, somebody used to be a taxi driver, right? And they got sick, and now they've lost their eyesight, and their eyesight is so bad they can't drive anymore. Now this person, their only means of living was driving a car, driving a taxi. They can't do it anymore, they're stuck at home. This would be a miskin. Miskin is not just any poor person. It's actually a poor person who can't help their situation. You know, if you choose not to go to work and then you're bankrupt, you're not miskin. You're probably ghabi, which is not very smart. Is what that is, right? Faqir is someone who's overwhelmed with bankruptcy. Faqr literally means the back to be broken by too many burdens. But miskin in particular are people who find themselves in helpless situations. So nowadays, for example, you can have people that are like, whose immigration papers are stuck and they can't get a job because of it and things like that, right? Those are miskin. There are people that are refugees, they're miskin. Right? People that are very old and their children are not around or something like that, those are miskin. These are examples of miskin. So people that are incapable of helping their situation, right? Allah says, وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَىٰ طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. In other words, them feeding themselves was never their responsibility. The moment they became helpless, they became the responsibility of society. And not just Muslim society, all society. We have to hold all society, liable for not taking care of them. Quran will combine these two groups all the time, like yatiman dha maqraba, or miskinan dha matraba. Yatim miskin. They keep coming together over and over, all over the Quran. But now we get to the hard part of the surah, the second half. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. If you think this was bad, if you think someone who denies the religion, even pushes the orphan, doesn't even speak out for the rights of to give the food to those who deserve it, the miskin. If you think that's bad, let me tell you someone way worse. He says, wail, the worst kind of destruction, the most terrible kind of curse. In the Arabic language, when you say the word wail, it's really bad. Nowadays, the Arabs don't think it's so bad. So when they're like, oh my goodness, they say, ya waili. I wouldn't recommend saying ya waili. Try not to use the word wail. If you're Arab, try not to use the word wail in that way because it's not a light term. The word wail in Arabic is used when you're wishing for someone to have sadness and grief and pain that is beyond imagination. The word wail is used in the Quran to describe a part of Jahannam, describe a part of hell. In hadith literature, you find wail is a place in Jahannam that Jahannam is afraid of. That's wail. So when Allah uses that word, it's far worse than using Jahannam and Nar and Jahim and Sa'ir and Hariq. Those are bad, but none of them even come close to what word? Wail. He begins this ayah with fawail. Moreover, wail, and by the way, wail is different from al-wail. When you put a tanween on wailun, some kind of unknown wail, some kind of wail beyond your imagination, meaning a kind of horrible punishment, destruction, sadness, curse, that is beyond words. Really, the only thing that can describe it is this tanween on the word wail. Is for who? Lil musallin. For people who pray. What? Wail is for people who pray? That's the end of the ayah. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ Allahu Akbar. If you did that, that'd be a problem, wouldn't it? Somebody standing in prayer and you're like, I'm going to have some real khushu' and salah. And then the ayah is, أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يُكَذِّبُ بِالدِّينِ فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدْعُو الْيَتِيمَ وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَىٰ طَعَامِ. Bad, worse. Let me tell you the worst. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. Those who pray, they get the worst part of hell. Allahu Akbar. You can't stop there, can you? You gotta just, wait, that means that there are different kinds of musallin. You know what a musalli is, right? Someone who prays. In one place in the Quran, Allah says, إِلَّا الْمُصَلِّينَ, Surah Al-Ma'arij. Everybody will be destroyed. There are people that are going to be destroyed except those who pray. In that ayah, he ended the ayah there too. So those who pray in that place are good people. In this place, those who pray are really bad people. You know what you're learning? You don't become good or bad because you pray. That's what you're learning. Just because you pray doesn't make you a good person. You understand? Because Allah, in two places in the Quran, one place, those who pray are great people. And another place, those who pray are what? Horrible people. Horrible people. What do we do as Muslims? Oh, he's a good Muslim, he prays. The guy cheats in business. The guy hasn't even given his mahar to his wife. The guy is not going to give inheritance to his daughter. The guy is cheating his partner. The guy is not paying off any of his loans. The guy is beating up his kids. The guy is lying, stealing, all kinds of crimes. But he prays. He prays. Allah says, those kind of people that pray, they're the worst. They are the worst. There's nobody worse than them. But this is actually, like I told you, this is not a Madani ayah. It's a Makki ayah. And the audience is the Quraysh. So this is where things get a little tough, and inshallah ta'ala, my job is to make it easy for you all to understand. Allah says elsewhere, وَمَا كَانَ صَلَاتُهُمْ عِنْدَ الْبَيْتِ إِلَّا مُكَاءً وَتَصْدِيًا. The Quraysh used to pray at the Kaaba. They used to make salah. They were also called musallin. The Quraysh were also called musallin. You know where they used to pray? Right close to the Kaaba. The more elite you are, the more important a person you are, you get VIP seats by the Kaaba. By the way, some of that is still there. There's a VIP section near the Haram. Apparently it goes by taqwa and money. So, you know, because you can't sit there. There's a certain class of people that get to sit there, you know. Something that never happened in the history of Islam happens now, right? But in any case, there's something, unfortunately, a kind of class society is something we've just come to accept. It's unacceptable in our religion, but it's just become part of so many cultures, right? I went to speak in one country that shall not be named, in the Muslim world, and they wanted me to give the khutbah. I said, that's fine, I'll give the khutbah. And they actually, you know, you see those security tape lines at the airport? They had that sectioned off for a VIP section for the first 3 rows of the musalla. And so when I went, they said, you sit here, because if you sit in the back, too many people will talk to you. I said, this is a masjid. How do you have sections in a masjid? The entire purpose of a saf, the entire purpose of a row in a masjid is, and the reason you take your shoes off, فَخْلَعْنَ عَلَيْكَ, is because the brand of shoes you wear, kind of an indication of where you come from, what status you have. Your shoes don't matter when you come to the masjid. It doesn't matter if you're Bilal. It doesn't matter if you're the king of a nation. None of that matters. Now you're standing in one row. Because when we stand in prayer, we are actually rehearsing the day of resurrection. We're going to be standing all together. It's not going to matter who's what. And that's what we rehearse in the salah. So when you bring class society into the salah, into the masjid, I can't think of a higher crime. I cannot think of a higher violation of the spirit of the prayer. So now, having said that, Allah is talking about the people who pray in Makkah, the Quraysh, who have their mushrik prayers. They don't have salah like we do. They have their mushrik prayers. And Allah says, these people who pray, the worst destruction is for them. Now wait, Allah is not talking about the Muslim prayer. He's actually first and foremost talking about the mushrik prayer. You know why He must be criticizing them? He must be criticizing them because they pray to false gods. He must be criticizing them because they do shirk. That's not true. That's not the criticism here. That's the criticism elsewhere. Understand the criticism here. الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ يُرَاءُونَ. Those who, when they pray, first of all, they care nothing for the prayer, ever. Sahun is the only time in the entire surah that a noun is used instead of a verb. Everything else, those of you that are familiar with Arabic, يُكَذِّبُ, يَدُعُ, لَا يَحُضُّ, يُرَاءُونَ, يَمْنَعُونَ. You were expecting يَسْهَوْنَ. الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ يَسْهَوْنَ. Allah didn't say يَسْهَوْنَ. He said sahun. Now for the rest of you who don't know Arabic, here's what that means. It means these people, there is never a single time that they pray that they care about the prayer. There's one time you have a bad day or whatever, you're like, Allahu Akbar. You're not really in it. That happens. But usually you're in it. Allah is commenting about people who are never into it. They never pray because they want to, or they care for it, or they're concerned about it. That would have been yashaun. And then the other thing is an salatihim in the ayah. Even their own version of prayer. You don't have to add the phrase an salatihim. You could say alladhina hum sahun. Because musallin is already mentioned. When you say an salatihim, Allah is saying even their pagan prayer. They don't even do it because they want to. So let me now help you understand what this is talking about. All over the world, is religion used for political reasons? Yep, I come from a country where religion is used a lot for political reasons. And that's Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam included. Religions can be used for political reasons. You have politicians before the election going into churches on Sundays, kissing babies. That's what they do, don't they? Do they want to be at church because they're feeling a spiritual urge, or it's campaign season? Everybody knows the answer. These people are not interested in religious rituals. They're not even people of God anyway. They actually have God complex themselves. They usually think of themselves as gods, And they're not interested in prayer or worship or rituals. The Quraysh, however, they are custodians of Makkah. And Makkah is a religious society, even if they do shirk. If they're going to be in charge of this society, they have to at least look religious. They have to what? Look religious. So even though they're not interested in the prayer at all, even their mushrik prayer, they're not interested, they still go and do it. Why? الَّذِينَ هُمْ يُرَاءُونَ. Because they have to show face. They have to make it look like they're religious. They have to just pretend. What we're learning now is that the worst of people on the earth are people who demonstrate their religious, fervor for PR purposes. To show people that they're legitimate rulers. You'll have the worst of people. Let's talk about my country, Pakistan. You have politicians that are murderers. They have blood on their hands. Rivers of blood on their hands. And then they'll do an entire, PR stunt and go to Umrah. and touch Hajar Aswad, and they've got their picture taken, and now they're spiritual all of a sudden. This nonsense is what is being talked about here. The Quran's criticism of Makkah is timeless. This disease doesn't just exist in Makkah. It's always going to exist. And we have to be smart about it. We can't be people that get taken for a ride. The Prophet is being told, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, just because things look a certain way on the outside, you need to look deeper and understand the reality of these people. They're not actually committed to their gods or religion. They're just committed to their own power. They're committed to this position. الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ. Some ulama, they looked at this ayah and said, yes, of course, it's a mercy of Allah that Allah didn't say fi salatihim sahun. He said an salatihim sahun. In other words, these people are mindless. He said about their prayer altogether. Instead of saying they're mindless, even a little bit in their prayer. Because if Allah said in their prayer, then all of us would be in trouble even if we become mindless a little bit in our prayers. So instead of fi, the an was used to say overall they don't care about their prayers. I would add a step further. Allah is actually commenting their entire religion is fake. To them. It's just a facade. And then you understand the next ayah, الَّذِينَ هُمْ يُرَاءُونَ. They're the ones in fact that they're in fact the ones that are really interested in showing off, in giving appearances. This is Qur'an's way of teaching the Muslim Ummah to be politically savvy. To not be manipulated by by public relations and media press coverage and appearances, because people that are not savvy and not smart, they see these things and they go with it. And they place their trust in people they're not supposed to place their trust in. Through the Quran, Allah is waking up the rest of Meccan society, not just the Muslims. That's the other thing. We're supposed to look at the world with eyes open, and we're supposed to help the rest of the citizenship of a nation open their eyes. We're supposed to be those people. Doesn't matter what people say about us. It doesn't matter. What propaganda they have against Islam doesn't matter. What matters is we are on a different task. That is just a distraction. The Prophet ﷺ was called insane, yes or no? He was called a liar. He was called insane. He was called a threat to the society. He was called all of these things. Did he go on a campaign giving entire speeches, here's why I'm not insane? Let me help you understand the misconceptions about Muhammad. Did he ever do that? He's on a mission. This is a distraction. What happened with us? When we get criticized with these distractions, they become our mission. We get busy with them. Quran is asking us to do something much bigger. Much, much bigger. For the rest of the world. The world is waiting for the Ummah to wake up. Not just the Ummah. The world is waiting for us to wake up. This is what the call is in this surah. And so, as I conclude and talk about how all of it comes together, my favorite ayah actually, وَيَمْنَعُونَ الْمَاعُونَ. These people, they prevent, their final crime is they prevent al-ma'un. Al-ma'un, lots of things have been said about it. I'll read some things to you. Al-ma'nu al-shay'u al-sahal al-hayyin. Ma'an is something small, easy, not a big deal if you lost it. Somebody asked you for salt. Some neighbor came over to you and said, do you have an extra spoon? You shouldn't have a heart attack about that kind of thing. Somebody who has man'ul ma'un, this problem, you came over to your neighbor's house, do you have any salt? We don't know what that is. And you slammed it on their face. You're that offended by somebody even having a little bit of what you have. Sometimes people have this kind of tendency, and they even teach that to their children. So this kid goes to school, and the kid next to him says, hey, can I have your eraser? Right? And he's watching how much you're destroying, there's no more rubber left. Come on, man, just you ruined it. You're teaching yamna'un al-ma'un. Petty things, little things. What Allah is teaching here is that these politicians, they've created a culture as a result. Because they are so selfish, it's not just that they are cheap in giving small things. They've now created an entire society where nobody likes to give anybody. When you have the leadership that can't be trusted, then mistrust becomes a virus and it starts affecting the entire society. So you don't want to look at your neighbor. You don't even want to smile at your neighbor. Because you look at them, they smile at you, you're like, why are they smiling at me? They're looking at me funny. Or somebody comes and asks you, you get really bothered. You get really, really disturbed. You have people, a culture is created, somebody's watering their plants in their front, in the front of their house. And some of the water spills over to the next side. And they just come on, hey, watch it. Keep your water to yourself. They're so petty about every little thing. Don't park your car here. Move it over there. Where does that come from, Allah is teaching us that when you allow leadership that is greedy and corrupt to stay on top, it actually starts permeating and turning into a culture at the bottom. Where people become, and they prevent even the smallest of gifts to be given. And if that happens, how is anybody going to take care of an orphan? How is anybody going to care about the مسكين? They don't even care about, they can't even give the small things that are easy to give. سمعت بعض العرب يقول المعون هو الماء المعين. Some Arabs said that ma'un is just even water. They can't even give a cup of water. They're even bothered by that. هو اسم جامع لمنافع البيت كالقدر والفأس وغيرهما. والمعون في الجاهلية المنفعة والعطية. They say in Arabic like a ma'un is like a cup, a pot, trivial things, These things that we are supposed to be like eager to just help somebody with if they want. Now, as I conclude, inshallah, I want to share with you some aspects of the literary style of this surah. This is a particular interest of mine, how the kalam and the speech of a surah comes together. If you notice, I told you how many halves does the surah have? 2, right? The first half, it actually has everything mentioned in the singular. And the second half, everything is mentioned in the plural. So you have أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يُكَذِّبُ, singular, the one who calls the religion a lie. لَا يَدُعُّ الْيَتِيمِ, singular, he pushes the orphan. لَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ, doesn't encourage the giving or the food of the poor or the needy. All of it was singular. As soon as the second half begins, you have فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ, people who pray, people who show off, people who are neglectful in their prayer, people who prevent even the smallest of gifts from being given. So you have the first half is singular, the second half is what? Plural. And this is important because Allah through this transition is teaching us that when you allow these kinds of singular individuals to do what they do, then the effect becomes plural. It starts affecting an entire society. That's the first lesson here. The second is, you notice, when somebody calls the deen a lie, that's a spiritual crime, yes? When somebody calls the deen a lie, it's a crime against Allah. But when someone pushes an orphan or doesn't take care of the poor, that's a crime against people. So in the first half, there was one crime against Allah, يُكَذِّبُ بِالدِّينِ. And there are 2 crimes against people. The 2 crimes are يَدُعُّ الْيَتِيمِ لَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. 2 crimes against people. If you notice the second half, that equation is flipped. It's 2 crimes against Allah. The first crime is you pray, but you don't care for prayer at all. Your prayer is entirely artificial. And the second is when you do pray, you pray for what purpose? What's your actual intention? Showing off. 2 crimes against Allah. And then 1 crime against people, وَيَمْنَعُونَ الْمَعُونَ. And this is actually part of the style of the Quran. Now what I told you is, in both halves, there's a spiritual crime and there's a crime against people. Then there's a spiritual crime and there's a crime against people. Why is this important to note? Because one spiritual crime is being explained by the next spiritual crime. And one crime against people is being explained by the next crime against people. They're tafsir of each other. In other words, how do you know someone cares nothing about the religion and they've considered the entire religion a lie when their prayers become nothing but a demonstration? When that's all that's left of the prayer, then the religion has been denied. This is very powerful because when our prayers become artificial ceremonies and our prayers don't result in us being people of giving, then our prayers are actually a denial of the religion. And that's not really prayer at all. Our prayers are supposed to be with salah. فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ. What does Allah say? فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ. You pray, then you sacrifice. And by the way, when you sacrifice, where do you give the meat to? Others. The idea was pray and be charitable. If you're praying and you can't be charitable, you're not really praying, you're denying the religion altogether. That's the explanation of it. If it's just for people, just for show. On the second hand, Allah said 2 groups of people are being denied. What are the 2 groups of people? Orphans and the needy. Orphans and the needy. If you've become part of a culture where you have a hard time giving ma'un, small gifts, you've become greedy in the smallest of things, then you should know that you are living in the society where the yatim and the miskin are being deprived. If that's what your neighborhood looks like, then for sure, the yatim and the miskin are in trouble in your society. And this entire criticism falls on you and on me. May Allah Azza wa Jal give us a clear understanding of His book and an appreciation of His book. I'm so grateful I got to see all of you guys and be able to share some of these lessons with you. Your homework assignment, once again, inshallah ta'ala, is to memorize this surah if you haven't already. Your other homework assignment is to live this surah, which means check on your neighborhood. Talk to people, even non-Muslims, yeah, even those. I've seen a lot of issues in the UK, guys, a lot. One of the biggest issues here, unfortunately, for a lot of people, is that they don't even see non-Muslims as human beings. I don't know where you get that from, but that's not this Quran. This Quran teaches you to dignify all people. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. We honored all children of Adam. There are drug problems in this society. There are alcoholism problems in this society. There are abuse problems in this society. And we're supposed to be not part of the problem. We're supposed to be part of the solution. May Allah Azza wa Jal make us carriers of this faith as we are supposed to be, and allow the society around us to see the beauty of the Quran through the Muslims that live here. Barakallahu li wa lakum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.